Hello every folks and welcome! Today we are talking about a mechanic that gets misunderstood constantly, and that is going to be MP regeneration. But what on earth are we doing back on the PS1? Well, long story short, there's a lot of things that have changed with MP over the years, and it's actually a little bit weird that, technically speaking, the current version that Reborn uses is more similar to the Game Boy Advance Tactics Ogre than any of the others. So I just kind of wanted to go over how this mechanic has changed, first of all, and then how to properly utilize it, because, well, quite frankly, a lot of this was gone and started by how many comments ended up coming in asking why I didn't rate the MP stabs higher in the tier list. Because, quite frankly, they're a backup plan. They're not exactly the main thing. Anyway, so, how did MP work back in the classics back here? Well, long story short, based on the amount of MP you had, you regenerated a certain amount per turn. So, for example, right here, based on RT, essentially she is getting a certain amount back per turn. Right here, because of the fact that she has the evil robe on, she is going and generating additional MP. Now, the interesting part about this is that when it comes to these different items potentially giving you an increase to your MP and stuff like that, they didn't bother telling you. So realistically, it was just a case of some people occasionally kind of had MP and sometimes they didn't. So, you know, that's all well and fun. Anyway, so this expanded quite a bit from, you know, they get MP sometimes to having a full-blown system in the PSP version, so let's give that a look. Alrighty, here we are back on the good old PSP. So what exactly do we have going on for MP mechanics this time around? Well, we've kept the whole thing where MP ends up going up based off of how big your MP bar is. However, this time around, they added a lot more potential ways to mess with it. So, actually, one thing that's a little bit of an honorable mention for last time is that if we go over here, we look over at the leaves and things. Technically speaking, you could add leaves to your people back in the classic version as well. However, you had to sacrifice an equipment slot to do it. You only had 4 slots for anything, period. So being able to sacrifice a slot in order to temporarily gain a little bit more MP instead of just simply waiting for your next turn, due to how much you were already regenerating, it wasn't exactly the most practical way to go about it, not to mention you had to reinsert that leaf every single time that you used it. In no way was this ever annoying. Anyway, so now we get over to the PSP version, and yes, we still have those same ones, and this time they are extra cheap. Now, the cool thing is, though, you then go over to your skills, and you can basically dedicate half your dang skill list to MP regeneration things. So, for example, we look over here, we have channeling, reducing the MP cost by 5%. You've got meditate, giving you a per rank bonus to your stuff here. Now, before, like I see this comment every time, before you go in and make the also wise decision to say that, you know, hey, you got to choose when you used your meditate, therefore it's always better. One Vision did that, not the original version. The thing is, you get to choose your meditate, sure, but it ain't free. Basically, that 13 RT that it's giving you is going to be, well, I mean, it's going to add up over time. Not to mention, you're functionally getting like 15 MP at this point. Bear in mind, this is a Chapter 4 save that is going through Palace of the Dead at the moment. They have already beaten the game, and they're simply going through Palace of the Dead after already worlding back, okay? They have been through a lot of stuff, and yet even with the rank bonus from the hat, this is simply giving about 15 with some variation per time that it's used. It's not giving you 50 plus per turn, meaning that meditate, for all intents and purposes, is incredibly slow to train up, takes a really long time to train up, and basically maxes out at 48 MP per turn. But again, it is not free, it is still taking time, it's still taking TP. Yes, usually casters don't have to worry that much about TP, but when folks say that it was, you know, giving them free MP all of the time, it was giving them a tiny trickle of MP, and it did come with a time cost. Because again, remember, RT is always ticking. Everything that you do is adding to RT. And that 13 recovery time, a lot of times I'll see the same folks going and like gushing over the like -8 that they get for using the full shaman build, and then completely ignore the +13 that they're getting for using meditate. I'm just throwing that out there. It's never as simple as one mechanic does only one thing. Anyway, moving on here. So like for example, we were talking about other things that you could use to improve your different stuff here, right? So let's go over to what we can actually learn on this guy here. So we already have meditate. We've got channeling, removing or reducing the cost of those things. We've got ranking tiers of field alchemy to get those leaves going. You've got expand mind to just kind of increase your flat regeneration. Bear in mind that this did not scale, so it was just giving you a tiny bit extra per round. And you had insight, which basically did the same thing as expand mind, but a bit worse and a bit more situationally. So it increased your max MP and also increased your kind of passive regeneration. So like this was scaled MP regeneration. This is not scaled MP regeneration. It's a slight difference. Long story short, again, you could basically dump half your dang buffs into improving your MP regeneration. And ultimately, the end result is basically the same thing as just meditate. So let's go into how Reborn does it and how to actually properly utilize it so that you're not constantly running out of MP. Actually, a quick little honorable mention here, going to the perfect version of Meditate in One Vision, which this one does scale off of your MP. You don't need to stack a million different things in order to make it work, and also it actually, while it does come with almost 4 times the cost of the original, well, it's actually closer to 3, I suppose. It's slightly more than 3, but a decent bit lower than 4 times faster than the original version on the PSP version. Basically, One Vision will give you a massive dump of MP based off of your actual MP percentage. So for example, like right here, I believe at this point it's giving like 40 plus 16 or something like that. Like it gives you one amount and then it gives you a scaled amount, and long story short, it gives you everything that you need, but you're paying a far more significant time cost. You don't have to use it as much, you don't have to rank it up anymore. So again, this is, in my opinion, the best way that it was handled, but let's go ahead and go over to the second best way here in Reborn. Alright, folks, let's go ahead and talk about MP mechanics in Reborn. Basically, things work differently this time. It's actually, as I mentioned earlier, closer to something like Knight of Lotus than it is any of the previous versions. Unlike the PSP version, while you have Meditate, it is a 40% chance to roll, which can be boosted up through either MP regeneration cards or through skill cards. Basically, both are going to be fairly easy to get a hold of, but just so you're aware, yes, when it comes to MP regeneration, they are essentially paying a cost in this, or paying a chance cost in this particular case, rather than a time cost. Alright, but here's the thing. You can build around MP a lot easier than many folks may potentially realize, and it's simply a matter of paying attention to logistics. So, a couple things that we notice right off the bat. When it comes to your caster types, as you may notice, up to this point, MP regenerates based off of how much of your turn you have completed. Now, there's a little bit of a quirk when it comes to MP here. You'll notice right here, everyone currently has 8 MP. So, we're going to go ahead and take an action right here. So you're aware, when it comes to your first round, in most cases, most units will have regenerated 10 MP per turn. However, usually the first 2 units that have taken an action in a particular turn will have only regenerated 8. So for example, right here, these 2, when they took their turn, only had 8, but now they are up to 10. Typically, 10 is going to be how much you are going to be regenerating regardless of anything else. The whole MP bar affecting how much you regenerate thing is not a thing in Reborn. The main ways that you affect it are going to be those MP cards and Meditate, as well as your actual build. What does this mean? Does it mean you have less options? No, because you have more options to build around in a different direction. Because many times when I see folks complaining that they don't have enough MP to make stuff work, they will have a spell list that looks like this, where you essentially have costs of like 45, 45, 70, 70, or God help you, 200 with Resurrection 2. And basically this is attempting to just take the numbers at face value and hoping for the best, which is just not something that we want to be doing. We want to be strategizing for what we have on hand. So, this is oftentimes why, for example, something along the lines of those MP sticks are seen as a necessity rather than a luxury. because essentially it is 300 free MP that they can get over the course of a fight. Now, again, if this is your strategy, though, that you're still going to run into having to recharge every few rounds, and then if it ends up lasting beyond those rounds, like if it's one of the way longer fights, then you're just hosed by the end of it because you simply will not have enough to keep functioning. So what we want to talk about today is how to actually make use of the tools that are on hand in order to not rely on something like the MP sticks. So, first and foremost, if you want a 100 MP heal just to start off the fight with, Fruit of the Adept will do the job just fine. But are we just avoiding the stick just to avoid it? No, we have other options. In this particular case, I like her to have access to the book finishers, so she's going to be using using her medicine journal over here as her primary weapon. Additionally, I may notice right here, if you don't have the MP to cast something, there's a lot of items in the game that give you free casts. A limited number of free casts, but it's basically the same thing as just taking a second roll on your meditate. What you want to do is always have backup plans. Just backup plans on backup plans on backup plans. So in this case, this, for example, is a unit that kind of wanted to go for both here. I was just training her in books and ended up leaving the stick thing on there just kind of on accident. Long story short, I was trying to make an example of this particular build here, but this is a step in the right direction, where you have one move that is cheaper than the rest, but something like this is still focusing entirely on trying to always do damage directly. It's always just going for the blunt, raw damage, not looking at them from any other angle. And in this case, you know, this is something that if they have a lower cost thing on the list, that is a niche wherein the charging stick would be maintainable. Because if they have lower costs, then sure, they can keep on going, they can go for other options. However, taking a quick step back, we take a look at something over here. We have a caster ninja type setup over here, in which case she is going to have access to one debuff, access to one AoE, and access to one missile ability. These aren't always going to be, you know, perfect end-all be-all options, but in this case, they're going to be hitting pretty hard with those, and they have the option of using poisonous double swords later on down the road if they need a fallback option. Again, it's just a fun build, but it's just something that can work. Now, in this case, we have a caster that doesn't have the ability to use her stuff right here. This is a fairly maintainable caster build, but you may notice she's got some backup plans. Namely, right here, we essentially have a means to boost her charm, and essentially going to be using that charm to try to get somebody on our team. Optionally, if she needed to go and breach somebody, she has that option, and if she needed to exercise something, it is cheap. Personally, I prefer using the exorcism staff on a lot of units, simply because they don't have to spend the MP cost for it, allowing it to sort of double as a recovery turn. But in this particular case, the black powder is cheap. She is going to go up here, essentially putting herself forward as a bit of a damage sponge, and that'll have to work for now. Now, that's, again, not exactly an ideal solution, though. Now, the ideal solution is this right here. So we're gonna be considering the roles of all of these units kind of one by one here, but I want you to look at the actual available options that they each have. So right here we see that he has a tiered list of different things that are available, as well as backup plans on backup plans. So right here, by his second round, he is guaranteed to have at least 20 MP. Nothing aside from orb users, which almost never come up, would be able to drain him of that MP by then, so by round 2 he's basically guaranteed to have this poison cloud available. His dagger has another poison cloud, and he's using the Staff of Restoration to boost his mind, to boost his effectiveness with this poison cloud. If he needs to recover, he can use the stick to heal himself, and he can also use Drain Heart to heal himself while attacking at the same time. But if he's got more offensive options available and adequate targets to do so, he can scale that up to a Spark Spear 3, or if he has a chance to go and bar dump somebody, then he has a Salamander 2. So he doesn't really have to rely on waiting for Meditate to come around. He doesn't have to rely on other things happening, because he has other backup plans in his pocket. Again, backup plans on backup plans on backup plans. It's not always perfect, it's not always ideal, but he's able to continuously have all of these different options on hand without simply relying on only one thing and complaining about it. Right here, we have another option, where we have the fairy over here, who's once again going to present herself as a target, but she is using the Ripple's Rod in order to improve her range. In this case, she is using the Pinion Blade also as a casting item in order to go and hit all of these guys back here. We see that there's some Earth units over here, but we can only reasonably target one of them at this second, so we'll go ahead and, hit right there. And as you may notice, a quick little aside on stats, you may notice she ended up hitting the Earth unit for about twice as much as the others. Now, bear in mind, stats-wise, she would have needed about 50 more in each of her stats in order to do that kind of extra damage. The reason that I mention this is oftentimes I see videos coming up claiming to have, effective, efficient ways of doing this, that, or the other, and a lot of times those end up coming up with with an unfortunate thing where they're just simply using cheated stats and calling that good enough, and honestly, it's a little bit heartbreaking to see a lot of times. It's like, hey, look, I boosted all of my stats above 2,000. I don't understand why I'm still having MP issues. It's like, because you're not playing the game at that point. You're just throwing numbers at a spreadsheet and hoping something works out. Like, just so you know, if you ever wanted to figure out how to spot one of those cases, reasonably speaking, towards the end of the game, you should be seeing stats roughly in the 200 to 400 range. Yeah, some people grind higher, but if somebody's even reaching those 1,000 costs, something's gone wrong. Anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about another thing about rolls real quick. So let's take a look at something like a Valkyrie. Amanda's notice here, she's got a heal 3. Now, basically the idea here is that she's a unit that can heal, she can cast, she can go and use finishers, but depending on the needs of the situation, she can adapt as needed. If she needs a cheap cherry tap on something like a Spark Spear 3, if she needs to do a quick heal on somebody, like for example we need to heal our cleric over here, there's a decent chance that that cast will be free. If she needs to go and use a more offensive option, like for example the Water Summon 2 that she's got on hand, the Undine 2, she again can just simply wait for it to be free, essentially waiting for a Steam sale on her mana costs, instead of simply going and burning all her MP, because she wants to use her MP to spam her finishers. She uses her Meditate to power her finishers, she uses her Conserve to essentially use her spells for free, and then if she wants to wait for both of those to trigger in their own respective ways, she uses the cast on the sword or just the sword itself to back up that particular option. So again, it just goes back to the same old thing of if you want to never run out of MP, the answer is pretty simple there. You just look for other ways to make that situation work. So right here, given the high health and the fact that this guy doesn't have concentration, we're going to go ahead and go forward and put a spell strike on him. He does a little bit of extra punching damage, so he's probably going to be a pretty good protector for those units around him. We see that dragon that we charmed earlier is doing a good job of carving up their own guys. Again, Purple People Eater out in the front, due to his high health and lower defenses, will simply bait out a lot of these hits and will essentially kind of draw aggro naturally in that direction. Now, once again, we see that over here we have our shaman, and she is going to simply continue waiting for her MP to happen. Again, the staff thing, in her case, I did have a staff on her up to this point, but what I'm trying to get across here is just it's not always going to be an option. It's not going to be a sustainable option. Again, not that it's always unsustainable. So to be 100% clear, it's not that it's always unsustainable or always a bad choice or anything along those lines. It's just that it's an option that essentially has a limited lifespan. It can't be continuously, like you can't recharge your staff in the middle of a fight, okay? You will eventually run out. So you want, like, one way or another, instead of simply waiting for that to happen, having those backup plans regardless of whether or not you're using a staff or not, it's just a good plan to have additional backup options. So again, like right here, by essentially using this Pinion Blade as her casting tool, she's able to save a lot of mana costs going into this fight. You can do the same thing with a Patriarch too, if you're wondering. By going and using something along the lines of let's say her Poison Cloud over here, like this unit over here, essentially poisons things until she goes and gets herself into a paradigm shift situation, and will essentially use that in order to facilitate big pushes forward. So like right here, we'll go ahead and see if we can reset multiple turns right here. And she can afford that 100 MP cost because she was going and using her debuffs in the meantime. We've got our Patriarch over here who has now gotten enough to use his summons, so now he can bar dump somebody if we really need to. So we'll just go ahead and throw some general damage out here. He hasn't built up for crits just yet. Technically speaking, while we would get a little bit of benefit off of going and sniping down one particular unit, I just want to spread some damage around there because they've got multiple healers, and therefore we can hopefully make some better use of their healing in that particular situation, just kind of redirecting all of it in different ways. So now we see that we've gone and pushed our cleric forward. We're going to go ahead and use that 45% charm to go and get that ghost on our side. Again, we now have 2 of their units on our side. We're essentially just pushing forward consistently. We're keeping our MP costs relatively low because we're essentially just saving MP on every action that we take. So let's see. We're going to go ahead and probably just go ahead and snipe this guy real quick. We could go for a item heal on our Enchantress, but for the moment they'll be perfectly fine. If you haven't figured it out, I am kind of waiting to go and use the resurrection on our cleric down the road, but we'll get there. Okay. So let's go ahead and scan around and see whose turns are coming up, because this is another thing. While MP costs affect you, they also affect enemy units as well. So we see that this guy currently does not have any finishers. That's actually weird. Why do you not have any finishers, sir? Anyway, if you did have a finisher, we would definitely remove that. What about you? You have a turn coming up. Do you have finishers? Why on earth do you guys suck so bad? Well, okay. Let's go ahead and find somebody who has a finisher so that we can steal it. Alright, never mind. For some reason, these early San Bronze units are ungodly levels of gimped and do not actually have anything that they can do with that. So I guess we'll just go and steal some... I guess we'll steal these guys' lunch money. Screw it. It's a little bit weird, but we'll go ahead and take it. So we'll go ahead and steal this guy's ability to heal. So this is actually why I was rating that... if you're wondering earlier why I rated the MP steal ability, or the Damask Mace so highly. Terror Knights, if you happen to get a high vitality or high resistance unit, are particularly good casters in situations like this, where you can simply, let's say, give them something like a Fruit of the Adept to trigger their ability to steal MP from stuff, and they just simply sit there, denying the ability to heal, denying the ability to cast, essentially doing that from a slightly annoying distance, and doing so allows them to basically be a low-cost suppression unit. And again, due to the fact that they're a heavier unit, this was the purpose of that higher vitality or resistance, due to that particular circumstance, they're going to be a decent bit better at going and, sustaining that whole situation, being able to just not be targeted, and if they are targeted, they simply walk away a little bit. It's just an interesting little dealie there. Alright. Any of these guys taking a turn anytime soon? Doesn't seem like it. This guy can probably go steal some health from something. Not very much, apparently, but either way, do you have any water units? Because I know that guy's a water unit. What about you? He doesn't have any cars at the moment. Dragon's probably going to drop his Charm Act pretty soon. You know what, why don't you just go ahead and go for a heal? And so this heal over here, again, we're going for a cheaper, faster heal instead of going for the main event, simply because, again, it's a little bit faster in this particular case. So there's a lot more considerations than big number do big number. Like, again, do not go for the most expensive thing all the time. As you can see, our most expensive option just finally managed to have the ability to attack something. It's like some kind of frickin' miracle. This is, again, to just drive... Like, I realize, again, this is kind of a dramatization of the whole thing, but you get the idea of how much of a difference it makes, because the whole rest of the team has been doing stuff this whole time, and she just finally managed to do something. If she used a stick, like Oelius did over there, she's essentially paying a time cost, using her entire turn, mind you, to go get that MP back, and then will need to do so again, more than likely, within a couple turns if they're going for that particular strategy. So, again, this is why I rate those how I rate them. It isn't for the purpose of, disagreeing for the purpose of disagreeing. There's just a lot of cases where you have better options available. Like, Granted, right there, she could have done more damage to these guys by simply attacking them. That would have been a more impressive number on paper. But she also has just made quite a large number of friends. So, you know, there's that as well. Now, also, since we have not used the, we haven't really used the MP costs on our cleric very much, we're just going to go ahead and take our cheap heal right there. And, you know, she's going to go ahead and sustain herself a little while longer. Now, since these guys are currently still doing their thing over here, we're going to throw a few poisons out here, see how that ends up treating us. We're going to go over here and pick up this MP recharge card, just to kind of allow him to freely bar dump at this point. Like, it's not that you can't bar dump or that you completely shouldn't bar dump. It's just a matter of, you know, right place, right time. So, for example, right here, she's going to go ahead and spam some of these abilities. Draconics are a weird case, wherein you probably don't want to use them that often. Realistically, I probably would have been better off just using the basic elemental version, but I just thought it looked neat. Actually, something else to potentially consider in terms of, is one thing better than the other? General rule of thumb for your big endgame AoEs, let's go ahead and use her as an example for this. Using Apocrypha is going to be your biggest bar dump and biggest single hit splash damage. Basic elementals are going to be your best kind of cost-value ratio for big AoE hits. And then Draconic is more expensive because it's got the longer range and slightly better damage. Like, for example, Vortex 2 would be the equivalent of Thunderflare 4, give or take. It's a little bit better for a giant cost in giant increase in its overall cost, but either way, just so you're aware, that's kind of where it all works out. It's not one is better than the other. There is a cost-benefit analysis to be done for any one of those particular things. And again, she's going back to attempting to poison things, because poison will be potentially doing a lot more damage than any of your damage-dealing abilities. Again, it scales, so as the game goes on, your damage will continue being really, really good off of poison. And this is, again, why, for example, with something like the Valkyrie here, we can simply have her skipping around, collecting cards, doing poison, doing casting, all of that kind of thing. Like, she's gone ahead and finished off that unit without actually finishing him. Causing a logistical problem using your casters of various kinds oftentimes can be a lot more disruptive than simply killing the unit outright. So, for example, we've got multiple units charmed at this point. Yes, one hit would uncharm them, but they all are going to be fighting against each other for the most part. If the healers were active, the fact that that guy is essentially going to be burning away health that entire time would mean that they are burning their MP, essentially causing this guy to be a distraction for these two units, causing them to essentially burn their turns, burn their MP, burn all of their economy in all directions in order to deal with the simple action that you took. And again, that kind of economic situation is what really matters. It's not the number do big number. It's a matter of how much chaos can you cause in the least amount of time. How can you force somebody to take a stupid action in order to potentially benefit you a lot more down the road? Now, obviously, as time goes on, you know, you may run into those situations where you find yourself with the ability to fully overpower something, and if it doesn't cost you anything else, absolutely go for it. Again, you might notice right over here, there's not been anything terribly impressive coming out over this out of the Cyclops. However, his whole purpose is just to spam stun. You may notice a couple of things have been passively stunned in the background. They're going to be losing their turns in the background. It's subtle. It's definitely subtle, but it is something that is going to be affecting the fight overall. And while this one is fairly simple, for the more complicated fights, this does allow you to do some very tricky things if employed correctly. So in this particular case, I see a opportunity to just attack a squishy, save some MP in the meantime, and we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and move Sherry over here, see if she can go ahead and just drop some damage on these guys. In this case, something like, see, like this right here, just so you know, these are those situations where Draconics come in handy. Like, where you need that one extra tile, like one extra tile of range would allow her to hit a lot more. So, it's not that, again, it's not fully a, you know, cost-benefit type situation. In this particular case, it would give her something that she wouldn't have otherwise. But that being said, we do have other potential options available. Like, for example, we can probably... 8 times... I mean, this is probably going to be pretty reasonably good to wipe him out. So, why the hell not? He's charmed, but screw it. Oh, God, I am so sick of this cough. This cold is the pits. Again, there we go. Disabled their unit. They're attacking their own units. It's good to have mind-controlled friends. Alright, so what else can we do here? Well, we probably might as well poison some more stuff, because why the hell not? Again, general rule of thumb, the higher health it has, the more you should be poisoning it. It's like right there, as will trickle over in just a moment, as a reminder of how dang good Poison Cloud is. When that thing goes, more than likely, it will be taking 300 plus damage just from that poison alone. So that's handy. So we'll be seeing that shortly. Now, we had a few units go ahead and take their turns. We can go ahead and just revive her right here. Again, just keep a wide variety of items on people to give them more actions to play around with. And at this point, we see that, you know, once again, she is low on MP and whatever else, so we'll go ahead and just use a different item. We are not losing out on our action economy by the fact that she doesn't have MP, because we have other things for her to play around with. We also see that they've got some turns coming up. There's a skeleton whose turn is coming up. Is this guy? Yes. So what we can now do is go ahead and go over here, take a nice, cheap 35 action cost move in order to go for this guy who currently... apparently cannot be charmed. What's that about? Is he charm proof? That is wired. Huh. Interesting. Okay, I'm not exactly sure why this guy is charm proof, but apparently he is charm proof for no apparent reason. Oh, hang on. I have the wrong one on here, don't I? This is lingering. Okay, well, in that case, let's go for another thing. Because, let's see, whose turn is quite a while from now? This ninja's turn is quite a while from now. And in fact, actually, why don't we have you take another action right here? So another thing to bear in mind, action economy-wise, is sometimes there are cheaper moves that can be very effective at turning things around. So for example, this is a 35 turn move that allows you to pass your turn on to somebody else. On paper, doesn't seem like, you know, like the craziest thing in the world, but it does allow, for example, right here, to allow her to recharge her MP entirely, while also picking up a card, while also using an exorcism at the same time. Again, the damage didn't matter because they took a whole lot of different ways to get to it. Damage itself is just a blunt, like a blunt stick. And sure, sometimes you need a blunt stick, but there's a lot more layers to this onion. And you know what? Those onion layers are what I'm here for. So that's what we're gonna do. Go ahead and use our Thunder Flare over that direction. Another thing to bear in mind also, as far as AoEs, you don't always, if you're looking to spawn more cards, if you're potentially looking at a kind of a strategic economy kind of thing, there's a lot of cases where something like a Thunder Flare, for example, or a Firestorm will break a lot of objects in a particular area, and every time an object spawns, or every time an object despawns rather, it has a chance to spawn a card. So if you were looking for cases where, you know, you were complaining about having card spawns not going your way, spawn them yourself. Like for example, right there, we have 2 Fizz Ups, we have 2 skill cards. Skill cards are dramatically the most common ones. So if you're having an issue with MP, simply go throw the cheapest AoE ability you got out there, add some grass, and there you go. You're almost guaranteed to have 1 to 4 skill cards at your disposal. So, you know, you have options. There's, again, a lot of options to all of this stuff, so it's definitely worth considering. Also, and just to throw this out there once again, if you, to the folks that were wondering why I rated Dragoons kind of low, this is why right here. Because anybody with a sword can almost guaranteed inflict poison on something like a dragon using Dragon Scale. Any debuff caster can go and use poison on something using Dragon Scale. This is, by itself, more useful than just killing the unit, because more often than not, it will burn health at a faster rate than any healer can heal. Their team will clamor around trying to figure out a way to deal with the situation, and they will never find one, because it is burning more than any healing ability in the game can achieve. So, you know, also maybe consider that. Also right here, If you're looking for one of those units that can potentially, drop a whole bunch of AoEs and things like that, you might have noticed that, that Cyclops has been doing pretty good at drawing in aggro to himself, and has been pretty good at just kind of breaking props around him, has been pretty good as a nice little distraction. Distraction, in many cases, has a very nice quality to it. All right. So, my voice does not want to function whatsoever anymore, so we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up right here. So, hopefully this helped to clarify a few things, hopefully this helped put some stuff into context, and hopefully this helped y'all maybe do a little bit better at this particular game. Again, if you ever want to just see a caster with infinite MP to actually do that whole mana dumping thing, remember, just break some props, go ahead and get yourself some cards. If you want to have a unit that's able to function regardless of all of that, stack up all of their options. Again, it's good to see something like this, where you've got options available at every kind of MP range, so that you always have something to do. Never rely on only one single option to carry you through anything, because it will eventually, bite you in the ass. It's just kind of how that works. Anyway, so that'll be that. Y'all have a good one. Have yourself a fantastic one, and take care.